The Tao Te Ching is an ancient Chinese text foundational to Taoism, offering profound reflections on the nature of existence, leadership, and harmony with the natural world. Composed in brief poetic chapters, it explores the concept of the Tao, often translated as the Way, a fundamental principle that underlies and unites all things. The text encourages simplicity, humility, and effortless action, Way, emphasizing living in balance with the rhythms of life rather than opposing them. Its teachings are paradoxical, inviting readers to transcend conventional thinking and embrace a deeper, intuitive understanding of reality. The text encourages simplicity, humility, and effortless action, Way, emphasizing living in balance with the rhythms of life rather than opposing them. Its teachings are paradoxical, inviting readers to transcend conventional thinking and embrace a deeper, intuitive understanding of reality. The Tao Te Ching is traditionally attributed to a figure believed to have lived during the 6th century BCE, a sage whose historicity remains partly legendary. This philosopher-scholar is reputed to have been a wise archivist or librarian who, disillusioned with the corruption of his era, composed the text as a guide for rulers and individuals seeking harmony and virtue. The text's style is poetic and cryptic, reflecting an emphasis on contemplation over dogma. While details about the author's life are sparse, the work's enduring influence across millennia speaks to its profound insight into human nature and the cosmos. The Tao Te Ching opens with a meditation on the ineffable nature of the Tao, the ultimate principle that is both the source and the pattern of all existence. It declares that the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao, pointing to a reality beyond words and concepts. This initial paradox sets the tone for the entire text, a teaching that embraces mystery and invites humility before the unknowable. The Tao is described as both the origin of heaven and earth and the mother of all things, yet it is itself nameless, formless, and beyond comprehension. The text encourages a letting go of rigid distinctions and urges the reader to observe the world with openness, recognizing that true wisdom lies in understanding what cannot be fully grasped. Following this foundational insight, the text explores the principle of Wu Wei, often translated as non-action or effortless action. This concept does not mean passivity or laziness, but rather acting in harmony with the natural flow of events. By aligning oneself with the day, one moves with ease and without force, avoiding struggle and resistance. The ideal ruler or sage leads by example through quiet strength and minimal intervention, allowing things to unfold naturally. The Tao Te Ching emphasizes that power is most effective when exercised softly and subtly, like water that adapts and flows, yet can wear away the hardest rock. Humility and simplicity are recurrent themes throughout the early chapters. The text extols the virtues of modesty and warns against pride and excess. It suggests that those who know do not speak much, and those who speak much do not truly know. The wise person embraces emptiness and restraint, cultivating a spirit free from desire and ambition. This approach fosters peace and balance, both internally and in society. The ideal state is one where people live simply free from excessive wants, and rulers govern with compassion and minimal interference, allowing harmony to prevail naturally. The Tao Te Ching also contrasts the ways of the world with the path of the Tao, it critiques the artificiality and violence that arise when people impose their will rather than adapt to natural rhythms. Warfare, competition, and greed are seen as signs of disconnection from the Tao. Instead, the text advocates a return to naturalness, spontaneity, and contentment with what is. It uses vivid metaphors to convey this, such as comparing the sage to an uncarved block of wood, simple, unpretentious, and full of potential. This image symbolizes the power of being unconditioned by social constructs or preconceived notions. The first part of the Tao Te Ching thus sets a philosophical framework centered on paradox, simplicity, and harmony with the flow of life. It invites a deep reconsideration of power, knowledge, and selfhood, urging a surrender to the fundamental principle that underlies all phenomena. By relinquishing control and embracing the Tao, one aligns with a path of wisdom that transcends conventional distinctions and leads to lasting peace. The Tao Te Ching continues by deepening its exploration of the Tao's subtle and pervasive nature, emphasizing the paradoxes that define the path to true understanding. It teaches that the Tao is both the source of all things and yet remains untouched by them, like a silent force behind the visible world. This hidden aspect makes it impossible to grasp fully with the intellect, calling instead for a form of intuitive knowing that transcends words. The text suggests that attempting to define or control the Tao leads to misunderstanding and loss, reinforcing the need for humility and openness. One of the most striking themes in this section is the emphasis on softness and flexibility as sources of strength. Water, frequently invoked as a metaphor, flows around obstacles with ease and eventually wears down the hardest stone, not through force, but through gentle persistence. Similarly, the sage embodies qualities like yielding, patience, and adaptability, which allow for endurance and influence without confrontation. This philosophy appends conventional ideas of power, proposing that true strength lies in embracing vulnerability and yielding rather than in aggression or dominance. Building on the principle of Wu Wei, or non-action, the text advocates for leadership that is subtle and unobtrusive. The best rulers, it argues, are those who govern so effortlessly that their presence is barely felt. When rulers act with restraint, avoiding excessive laws and harsh punishments, people naturally align themselves with harmony and order. The Tao Te Ching critiques rulers who seek to dominate through force or coercion, warning that such methods only breed resistance and instability. Instead, the ideal leader cultivates trust and allows the natural order to flourish, mirroring the Tao's effortless governance of the universe. The idea of simplicity extends beyond political philosophy into the personal realm. The Tao Te Ching encourages individuals to shed desires, ego, and artificial distinctions that cloud perception, while returning to a state of naturalness unaffected by societal expectations or personal ambition. One finds contentment and peace. The text repeatedly asserts that those who grasp the Tao do not compete, do not seek to impress, and do not cling to possessions or status. This detachment is not nihilistic, but celebratory of life's inherent balance and harmony. The tension between knowing and not knowing runs throughout the text. It suggests that wisdom involves recognizing the limits of human knowledge and embracing mystery. Those who pretend to know everything are blind to the deeper truths accessible only through experience and openness. The sage remains humble, admitting ignorance and allowing the Di to guide them. This humility is linked to the theme of non-contention, avoiding needless conflict by stepping aside rather than confronting directly. By aligning with the natural rhythms of life, one escapes the turmoil of ego-driven struggles. The text also touches on the dangers of desire and excess. It warns that chasing wealth, fame, or power ultimately leads to dissatisfaction and conflict. True fulfillment arises from moderation and balance, qualities fostered by living in accordance with the Tao. This teaching has ethical and spiritual dimensions, calling for compassion, generosity, and self-restraint. The sage acts without attachment, giving without expectation, and leads without coercion. Such behavior nurtures social harmony and personal tranquility. In metaphor-rich passages, the Tao Te Ching describes the Tao as a mother that nourishes all things, a valley that never fills, and a wellspring of endless renewal. These images evoke abundance that is quiet and sustaining rather than aggressive or acquisitive. The text invites readers to see themselves as part of a larger whole, interconnected with nature and the cosmos. This holistic view contrasts with the fragmented, competitive mindset that dominates much of human history. The second part also delves into the theme of emptiness. Emptiness, rather than being mere void or lack, is presented as fertile space, the open center from which creativity and transformation arise. For example, the usefulness of a vessel lies in its emptiness. The value of a room depends on the space inside its walls. Similarly, cultivating an open mind and heart allows one to respond flexibly to life's changes. This paradoxical view of emptiness as fullness challenges ordinary ways of thinking and invites a deeper contemplation of being. Further, the text discusses the balance between action and stillness. While encouraging non-action, it does not advocate passivity. Instead, it proposes a dynamic balance, acting without forcing, moving without haste, influencing without dominating. This rhythm mimics natural cycles and is reflected in the seasons, the movement of the stars, and the flow of rivers. Living in harmony with these cycles is presented as the path to health and longevity. Finally, the Tao Te Ching contrasts the wise and the foolish, often using ironic or poetic language to illustrate their differences. The wise are described as those who embrace humility, embrace the Tao's mysteries, and do not cling to rigid views. In contrast, the foolish are those who seek certainty, impose their will, and fail to see the interconnectedness of all things. This dichotomy underscores the text's central call to awaken to a different way of perceiving and being in the world, one marked by simplicity, patience, and compassion. As the text unfolds, the reflections on leadership deepen, emphasizing the paradox that the best leaders are those whose presence is barely noticed. True governance arises from humility, subtlety, and the ability to govern without controlling. When leaders act without arrogance or excessive interference, the people flourish naturally. Imposing strict laws or demonstrating power through force only breeds rebellion and chaos. The text encourages rulers to embrace simplicity and selflessness, fostering a culture where people live in harmony with the Tao and each other. The virtue of humility remains central. The Tao Te Ching repeatedly praises the lowly, the meek, and the yielding as embodying true strength. These qualities, often dismissed in conventional power structures, are elevated as keys to resilience and influence. The text illustrates this through natural examples. Water flows to the lowest places, yet it overcomes the hardest obstacles by its persistence and softness. Similarly, people who embrace modesty and avoid self-importance align with the Tao's flow and endure. The teachings extend to the realm of personal conduct, urging readers to cultivate simplicity in desires and actions. Excessive wants, pride, and ambition are seen as sources of suffering and discord. While paring down to essentials, one achieves clarity and peace. The Tao Te Ching advocates for a life where needs are met without greed and pleasures are enjoyed without attachment. This balanced approach nurtures a contented spirit and fosters harmonious relationships. The text also offers guidance on speech and knowledge. It warns against excessive talking, boasting, and contentious debate. True wisdom is often silent or expressed in few words. Those who claim to know everything are depicted as lacking true understanding. This emphasis on restraint encourages listening, reflection, and openness to learning. The humility to admit ignorance and embrace mystery is a hallmark of the sage's character. Interwoven with these ethical and political reflections are poetic images that evoke the mysteries of existence. The Tao is described as the source of all things, eternal and unchanging, yet it manifests in endless diversity. This unity and diversity invites readers to see beyond surface distinctions and recognize the underlying interconnectedness of life. The text challenges dualistic thinking and encourages embracing paradox as a path to wisdom. Further chapters explore themes of contentment, detachment, and the cyclical nature of life. Contentment arises from appreciating what one has rather than yearning for more. Detachment from rigid desires and identities allows one to flow with life's changes. The Tao Te Ching presents existence as a series of transformations, urging acceptance of beginnings and endings as natural processes. This cyclical perspective promotes resilience and equanimity in the face of uncertainty. In addition, the text addresses the nature of knowledge and learning. It contrasts the rigid scholar who clings to doctrine with the open-minded student who remains receptive to new insights. The former is limited by fixed ideas, while the latter progresses through humility and adaptability. This dynamic learning process reflects the Taoist ideal of continual growth without attachment to fixed outcomes. Finally, the text returns to the theme of balance, emphasizing the need to harmonize opposites. Light and dark, hard and soft, high and low all exist in dynamic interplay. The sage understands and respects these polarities, avoiding extremes. This balanced approach fosters health, harmony, and spiritual insight. And continuing its gentle guidance, the Tao Te Ching invites us to examine our instincts for control and domination. It warns that striving to change the world by force often leads to unintended consequences. Instead, it encourages a hands-off approach that trusts the natural unfolding of things. When we interfere too much, whether with others, with nature, or with ourselves, we disrupt the harmony already present. The wise person intervenes only when necessary and always with reverence for what already is. This non-interventionist wisdom extends to warfare and justice. The text views conflict as a failure of alignment with the Tao. While it accepts that violence may sometimes be unavoidable, it warns against celebrating victory or glorifying might. True strength lies in restraint, and those who understand the Tao mourn the necessity of battle. Laws and punishments, too, are seen as poor substitutes for inner virtue. When people live by the Tao, fewer rules are needed, and true justice arises spontaneously. The theme of doing without doing runs throughout the work. This is not laziness or apathy, but a kind of effortless action born from deep alignment with the natural order. Like a tree growing or a river flowing, actions rooted in the Tao require no strain. They emerge with grace, and their impact endures. This principle applies to everything from daily decisions to grand enterprises. The less one forces, the more lasting and harmonious the outcome. Simplicity remains a cornerstone of the text's philosophy. In both thought and lifestyle, the Tao Te Ching advocates reducing clutter. The more complicated our desires, the more we suffer. By valuing simplicity, people become more self-reliant, communities become more cohesive, and leaders avoid corruption. The sage deliberately lowers ambition, softens pride, and stays close to the earth. In doing so, he becomes an anchor for others, guiding without commanding. As the teachings deepen, the text reflects on the virtue of yielding being like a child, or like water. These are not symbols of weakness, but of resilience and power. Water nourishes all things without striving. A child embodies openness and trust. To yield is not to lose, but to adapt, endure, and transform. In storms, the rigid tree breaks, but the flexible reed bends and survives. This metaphor of softness prevailing over hardness is central to the Taoist worldview. The Tao Te Ching also turns inward, encouraging deep self-awareness. Rather than chasing praise or fearing blame, one should become intimate with their own nature. Knowing others is intelligence, but knowing oneself is true wisdom. Mastery over others may bring status, but mastery of the self brings freedom. By looking within, we find a stillness that remains unshaken by external change. This inner peace allows one to act in accordance with the Tao at all times. Harmony between opposites continues to emerge as a guiding idea. Rather than seeing life in binaries, good or bad, strong or weak, the text urges integration. Opposites define each other and rely on each other. Joy has no meaning without sorrow. Wealth is meaningless without the experience of poverty. Power exists only in contrast with vulnerability. By embracing this dance of opposites, one begins to see the unity beneath diversity. At every turn, the text gently pulls us back to nature. Mountains and rivers, animals and trees, these are not just symbols, but teachers. The natural world lives by the Tao without resistance. By observing and imitating nature, we remember our original wisdom. The more we distance ourselves from nature, the more disconnected we become from the Tao and from ourselves. As the Tao Te Ching draws to a close, its tone becomes even more contemplative, more inward-facing. It does not crescendo toward a dramatic conclusion, but settles into a soft murmur, like a river easing into the sea. The final chapters reinforce the essence of Tao: quietude, yielding, and profound inner harmony. The text circles back to its core idea: wisdom arises not from force or intellect, but from becoming attuned to the natural rhythms of existence. The further one tries to grasp the Tao, the more elusive it becomes, but by letting go, it reveals itself in full. Stillness is presented not as inactivity, but as deep engagement with life without resistance. In a turbulent world where motion and ambition are glorified, the text invites us to be still, to wait, to observe, to allow. Just as muddy water clears when left undisturbed, so too does the heart become transparent in stillness. This inner clarity allows us to act without attachment, to speak without ego, and to live without constantly striving to control outcomes. In this space, the Tao naturally flows through us. One of the recurring motifs in the final passages is the paradox of emptiness. The usefulness of a vessel lies in its emptiness. The value of a room lies in the space within. What is not there is just as important as what is. In a culture obsessed with accumulation, this lesson is radical. We are reminded to value silence, gaps, stillness, and space. The Tao does not manifest as solid form. It is the unseen structure behind all things, the negative space that allows life to breathe. Learning to cherish what cannot be possessed is a mark of spiritual maturity. The text returns to its reflections on leadership, offering some of its most profound insights on power and governance. The highest form of leadership is one that goes unnoticed. When the people say, "We did it ourselves," the leader has truly succeeded. Control breeds resentment. Humility fosters trust. Harsh authority may bring short-term obedience, but only gentleness cultivates lasting harmony. The wise ruler, like the Tao, acts subtly, never asserting dominance, yet guiding all. In doing so, they align not only with the people, but with the cosmos itself. This principle extends beyond political leadership to personal conduct. Those who seek to dominate, to win, to rise above others, are portrayed as misaligned with the Tao. Instead, the text praises those who lower themselves, who remain soft and humble, who do not seek credit or fame. Like water, they find the lowest places, nurturing all they touch. Water is a central metaphor. It is yielding, formless, and soft, yet it erodes the hardest stone and nourishes the world without effort. Those who emulate water learn to endure, adapt, and influence without conflict. The text's repeated call is to return not to a specific doctrine or belief, but to the root of all being. This return is a journey inward toward simplicity, contentment, and unity with the Tao. To return is to become like an infant, soft, impressionable, unburdened by knowledge or desire. In innocence there is clarity. In simplicity there is freedom. Complexity is the hallmark of a mind lost in ambition. Simplicity is the path back to essence. There is also a striking emphasis on self-restraint. Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know. This cryptic line suggests that true understanding transcends words. The Tao is not something that can be explained or argued. It must be lived. Silence is not ignorance, but reverence for the mystery. The wisest are often the most silent, not because they lack ideas, but because they understand the limits of language. They recognize that the Tao is beyond naming and beyond grasping. It is not a concept, but a way of being. In the closing reflections, the text reaffirms the importance of living in accordance with the present moment. Planning, ambition, and control are seen as distractions from the now. The sage does not concern themselves with the future, nor dwell in the past. They act in harmony with what is, responding fluidly, without resistance. This responsiveness is not passivity, but the highest form of action, one that emerges spontaneously from alignment rather than effort. To act without striving is to act with grace. The idea of contentment surfaces again and again. To be satisfied with little, to not crave more, to accept the ebb and flow of life, this is not resignation, but deep understanding. The more one desires, the more one suffers. Letting go of ambition and attachment opens the door to serenity. The sage has nothing, yet lacks nothing. By emptying themselves of desire, they are full. In yielding, they are strong. In not competing, they win. These paradoxes are not meant to confuse, but to reveal a deeper truth. Strength lies in softness, and fullness in emptiness. As the text concludes, there is no grand finale, just a gentle reaffirmation of the way. The Tao is ever present, subtle, and infinite. It does not need defending or explaining. It is the origin of all things and the path to lasting peace. Those who embody it may not shine in the world's eyes, but they live with an unshakable harmony that cannot be disturbed. The Tao is not a destination, but a continuous unfolding. To walk it is to surrender, to observe, and to be. In the end, the Tao Te Ching leaves us not with answers, but with a way of seeing. It offers no rigid morality, no fixed dogma, only the wisdom of nature, and the suggestion that perhaps in letting go, we find what we truly seek. The journey does not end with the book. It begins with every quiet moment we choose to live in alignment with the unseen order that moves all things. Thank you for joining us on this meditative journey through the Tao Te Ching. In a world of noise and striving, its quiet wisdom reminds us to soften, slow down, and flow with life rather than against it. This isn't a book of rigid rules, but of subtle invitations to live simply, to act without force, and to rediscover strength in stillness. As you step away from this reflection, may its teachings continue to echo in moments of tension and in the quiet spaces in between. Remember, the greatest truths often lie not in what is said, but in what is felt, in the pause, the breath, the space where the Tao speaks without words. If you found peace or insight here, consider subscribing to Mindful Reads. More timeless wisdom is on its way, softly spoken, soulfully rendered. Until then, stay present and stay curious.